Okay,
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Thursday, April 2nd, 2026 meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. Present tonight, we have Secretary John Morgan, Mike Bugda, myself, Carol Snow, Chair, Bob O'Connor, Michelle Clark, and Vice Chair John Duza. And attending via Zoom, we have Janet Peckinpah. Absent are Jeff Downs, Andy Rubin, and Max Curran. So Michelle Clark, our alternate, I'd like to seat you in place of. Sure. Thanks. And that said, we can jump right into the agenda. And our first item is the pending application 26-7, 67 Middle Beach Road, map 16, lot 86, zone R4, owner applicant Scott and Jane Gamber. This is a coastal site plan application for the replacement of existing concrete bulkhead cap, maintenance of existing stone and concrete groin, and replacement of existing wooden groin. So I invite the applicant forward.
Yes, thank you. Where should I set up? Does the commission have a preference?
You have paper, so.
Do.
I can screen share for you too, Dave, for
Oh, yeah, we can screen
Attending.
share.
Yeah, whatever,
your site.
whatever is
just
most
the
convenient.
Site plan?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really just the site plan.
Set up both.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
okay.
can do that.
Yeah, okay. In the middle there?
Anywhere.
Okay, thank you. All right.
You can see we're quite tonight.
Well, thank you. That's big. Maybe just the first sheet will be helpful. I have some photos and then the site plans. Yeah. So I am David Preventure. My company Shore Design was hired by the owners of this property. So 67 Middle Beach Road is the principal property on the north side of the road. And then the associated waterfront lot is across the street. And it's undeveloped other than waterfront infrastructure. So we were brought on, there was some in-progress work started to the waterfront. And there were some proposed activities that they wanted to do. So they hired us to design everything and then obtain the necessary coastal permits from DEEP, from the New England Army Corps of Engineers and from the town of Madison. So just to give you some quick walkthrough of the site. So here it is here, and so top photo is looking east. So there's a historic stone masonry bulkhead along the waterfront, and there's several groins. I've heard you all talking about them before, and I can describe what those are, sort of in a practical sense. And then there happen to be several of them along the waterfront here. And then looking west on the bottom photo. Very level lot. So there's several groins. So here's this top one is a wooden groin, and all a groin is just a wall that's perpendicular to the shoreline. So its job is to trap sediment, and it actually protects the shoreline infrastructure by building up the sediment. So this old wooden groin was actually permitted a long time ago by the state. So it's actually a permit on file for this. So as we look over here at the western end of the property, another groin that's stone with a concrete cap. And here's a close-up of that western stone groin. And one of the activities that was started was building these concrete stairway. Because there was no means for the homeowners to actually get down to the water prior to that. And then there's just some more detail of that western groin. Yeah, you got.
I've got a screen sharing for Zoom.
Great. So here's the existing site plan. So just to give you some bearings here. So here's that large stone groin with a concrete cap, and then here's that concrete stair on top of the groin coming down. So prior to that stair being there was no way for them to safely get down to the waterfront. Over here, this is an old groin here, pre 38 hurricane. No work is being proposed to that. It's really, it's flattened out. It's not serving a huge purpose. But then this long wooden groin has fallen into disrepair. So part of the focus of the project is to rebuild that. So, I'd say the primary focus of the project is to recap the existing bulkhead. So that work was started. It was stopped once the homeowner was informed that permits were needed for this work. So we went ahead, got permits from the Army Corps, obviously here before you tonight, for coastal site plan approval. So it's the bulkhead cap running the length here. Just some in footprint repair to that stone and concrete groin, and then removing the entirety of that old wooden groin, and then shortening it both in length and in height. So here's just a profile of our existing concrete stairway that is now legal through deep in the Army Corps. Raising the existing bulkhead, actually to complete the work with that bulkhead cap. And then you can see sort of the profile of the wooden groin down here, going from, what are we, 90, almost 100 feet long down to 56 feet long. And so very low profile, so people can step over it. They're walking along the shoreline. So that's the project, as concisely as I can make it. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Can you explain the tongue and groove wall construction of the wood groin?
Yes, sure. So in terms of how it works,
And what it looks like and how thick it, like dimensionally?
yeah, so dimensionally it's about 3 to 4 inches thick. So this is marine grade, pressure treated tongue and groove sheeting. So what they'll do is it's basically three components. So the timber piles here are the vertical component. That really anchor everything in, and you'll get the most depth from that. And then vertically, you'll have some framing, so wales that sort of run horizontally, and then you'll have the sheeting that's actually doing all the work by trapping the sediment.
What is the material?
All wood.
Marine grade pressure treated wood?
Yes.
And so how deep does that go into the sand?
So, it depends. I think this is pretty rocky and sandy here. So, it's probably only going down maybe 4 feet, not very deep here. The piles will probably go down deep.
So it's full of wash, I'm sure.
Yes,
But this is below the high tide line, correct?
it is. Yeah. So the face of the bulkhead.
Yeah, the seawall is,
Yeah. So mean high water, high tide line, coastal
Hits the
jurisdiction
wall.
line hits the wall.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The only tide line that's off the wall is
Mean low.
mean low. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see my glasses here. So mean low is out here.
And the outermost post or pile, how tall is that?
So we are out here. It's actually going to be lower than the top of the bulkhead
Oh,
that's there now. But so we're at this level here. So
lower than the top of the
it is.
seawall,
Yes.
but sticking up.
Yeah. So it's going to serve as a navigation marker.
I was wondering, I
Exactly.
kayak by there.
Yeah.
And I hate the old wooden
Yeah, it's an eyesore.
groins that are, they're dangerous.
They are, and the owners are super concerned about that. So
Yeah.
even during like high tide, if you're swimming,
Yeah,
if there's some obstructions, you don't see
you
them.
won't see it. And there's so many paddle boarders these days too that
Yeah,
it's
so
really easy to get hung up on.
we did this design a little uniquely in that normally there's just one marker pile out at the end. Here, we actually are doing intermittent piles all along the length.
So you'll see those.
So exactly, so even
At
at
high
high tide, you'll know that there's
Something there.
a length, exactly.
And then my bigger question is, do you really need that?
Yeah, of course, do we need anything, right?
In terms of the currents and the sand movement. you know, it's.
Yeah,
It's like-
so here, it's always been my experience that your best defense is Mother Nature. And so the more material that you can build up against the shoreline, the better protected it's gonna be. So here, without these groins, the wave action is just gonna scour out the base of the seawall or the bulkhead and could undermine it.
I mean, you've got the
So-
two other stone groins and then even, I think, a third one on the next property, the east.
Yeah, so this.
Yeah, that's agreed.
Yeah, so this is just sort of like
Pile of
a flattened
rocks.
pile of rocks, not doing anything. This growing here is really abandoned. We're not proposing to do any work to that, and it's not even permitted. It's just been there.
Yeah.
For almost 100 years. So this big guy at the western end is doing a lot of work. So basically, we're ignoring that this is doing any function. But this groin itself, once it's shortened and rebuilt, it's gonna just stabilize it. We're not building up a lot of material here, really just keeping the sand level stable. So that there's less chance of it being scoured out at the base.
So you mentioned 1938, so if there was a storm like that again, what would the impact be on these structures? Are they built to withstand something like that?
These are all historic structures that, you know, they're doing their best to work within their existing footprints, you know, so. It's very hard to plan and design for something that's gonna withstand the worst storm. So you do it for what's practical within budget and, if you tried to do that, these things would be cost prohibitive. It's. So obviously this, you know, the bulkhead has withstood, you know, the hurricane of 38 and then through all the storms since. You know, it's been maintained. These groins have gone in and out of disrepair. And that's normal for coastal structures. It's a lot of maintenance.
Is there a significance to the distance between the original stone groin to the left and the replacement groin to the right, in between that little one that we're ignoring, and
Yeah,
possibly what Carol was referring to on the other side?
so along some stretches of shoreline, there's actually groin fields that are designed, you know, to occur in, you know, in certain distances. This is not part of a design groin. But typically, if you have multiple groins along a length of shoreline, they'll act together, so they'll work in pockets to create, you know, so if you put a groin way over here and not here, there would be more bulkhead exposed potential scout. So sometimes the closer they are.
I think even in your view to the west, you can see another dilapidated
Sure. Yeah.
groin. Or no, maybe it was to the east.
Yeah, east.
Or both, maybe.
Yeah.
They're all along the shoreline.
So there's a wooden groin way over here.
Yeah.
There's some bedrock there. There's a.
Oh, yeah, no, you can see it to the west,
Yeah,
sticking out.
there's one, there's a groin there. I don't think that's been rebuilt yet.
Yeah, I think it is.
So, but at some point, yeah, when these were built, you know, they were acting more like an informal groin field.
And do you have any sense of how long this one will last, just in terms of like life cycle?
Typically for this type of material,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it could be 30, 40 years. Yeah, I mean, this one was permitted, I want to say,
I think it was 67 or.
yeah, I was gonna say 50s or 60s.
67.
So, and I think it's been in this state of disrepair for probably 10, 15 years. So
Interesting.
there's the math, you know, pretty much. And
What is the jurisdiction of this work? Because when you're out in the water, you're not inside the property anymore.
yeah,
So what rights do you have? How does that work?
so the private property ownership ends at knee high water. So in that case, it, you know, pretty much runs along the face of the bulkhead there. So then beyond that, it's public lands held in trust by the state.
Right.
But the rights of, so a waterfront property has inherent rights to wharf out or to have access into public lanes.
Okay.
Okay, so, and the state recognizes that, so now they're actually calling, instead of permits, they're calling them licenses. So they give you a license to maintain, build a structure on public lane.
And the owners have this.
Yes,
But you're making it so that at low tide, the public can walk across it.
at low tide, so, they take a practical approach to these more historic properties. So anytime you modify a structure, which is what we're doing to that groin, they're gonna wanna see, can the public get over it? With this groin here, we're not modifying it, we're just sort of maintaining it, so they didn't require us to build
Yeah.
in. Yeah, but say for some reason this was destroyed and the owners wanted to rebuild it, the state would require them to design in public access over it, through it, something like that.
Any other questions? Janet, any questions? All right, it's good. You know, those are, and some, they're somewhat grandfathered in too, weren't they? I mean,
They are.
they survived the hurricane of 38 and then they've been rebuilt maybe a couple times, so they're existing.
They are, yeah, so. Yeah, the
They're not
state's,
within our jurisdiction.
As
As educational as this
the
has been,
public,
it
as the
is,
public, we want to use them.
it is not within the commission's purview to permit or.
My kayaking
regulate
rights don't. All right, well, I think, great, we could have a motion through, and Aaron drafted some notes and also a draft resolution, so. Michelle, you want to read the presentation? Thanks for the presentation.
very well.
There's a draft.
Not few pages.
No, I don't have to read the whole,
No.
all the notes.
The Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approves application number 26-7, 67 Middle Beach Road, map 16, lot 86, zone R-4, owner applicants Scott and Jane Amber. Coastal site plan application for the replacement of existing concrete bulkhead cap, maintenance of existing stone and concrete groin, and replacement of existing wooden groin as shown in application documents prepared by Shore Design LLC with the following conditions. Number one, that the zoning enforcement officer be notified at least 48 hours prior to commencement of any regulated activity. Number two, any areas temporarily disturbed during installation activities shall be restored to their condition prior to commencement of such work. In the event that changes to the approved plans are required as a result of other agency committing to support the proposed activity, the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission reserves the right to review said changes and may require modification of this approval. The commission finds that with the above referenced condition, the proposal is consistent with all applicable goals and policies in the Coastal Management Act, section 25 of the Madison zoning regulations. No anticipated impacts to coastal resources are expected. The effective date of this proposal, this approval is April 16th, 2026.
Double Connor, all in favor? Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is our zoning code update. Discussion of the adoption of reorganized zoning regulations and scheduled public hearing for May 7th and discuss statutory changes as they relate to future zoning regulation updates. Our consultant here, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Mike Tomato. I'm with Tyson Planning and Policy Group, and we are have been and will continue to work with you folks and staff on the zoning reg updates that we're sort of in some ways kicking off, I guess, tonight. There's a couple of things that we wanted to talk about and go over, and I'm just going to frame stuff up so that I have it. You have it in front of me as well. So one of the things that we sort of landed on as becoming a part of the initial, the start to this project is basically codifying your zoning regulations so that they are incorporated into the entire body of the town's code online, just like ordinances, charter, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons for doing that. And so before we got started with a wholesale review and proposal to make amendments, we thought it made sense to take the current set of regulations, get them codified, go through the whole process with the town's vendor for that, and essentially create the initial snapshot of this project as being your current regulations, so that there are online records and all the corresponding information sort of tracks how we've made those changes. So that is normally a fairly straightforward process. We've done it in several other towns at the start of the zoning reg project. And it was a little bit more challenging here just because you sort of have a couple of different subsets of the regs. You have books and appendices and all kinds of stuff. I think I called it an anthology. So figuring out how to get it all into one cohesive document so that we could apply a single organizational structure from start to finish was a bit of a challenge. But a couple of months ago, we presented to you an anticipated table of contents to show you how we were going to reorganize everything and just sort of put it all together, but keep the same content so that it made sense and we could sort of create that level set to go forward. So since that time, we have been doing that work, working with Aaron. We've submitted a couple of portions of the regs to general code for their review to make sure that we're on the right track.
Michael, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No.
Can you explain what general code is for everybody?
Yes. So general code, most people are familiar with them because they are the ones that generate the building codes and fire code the documents that are used all across the country. They also do codification, or they are known as codifiers. So if you go to a town website and you'll see, you know, that their regulations are in some sort of web viewer where everything's hyperlinked and sort of its own sort of program software, if you will. They do that, but there's a sort of a freedom of information and record keeping side to that as well, where they basically analyze your documents, ensure that you have everything organized correctly, ensure that you don't have conflicting ordinances and regulations, make sure that you're not referencing laws and acts that were eliminated 20 years ago. And every time you make an amendment, they create supplements to those documents. And so the town clerk and Aaron will have sort of the original authoritative paper versions of these books, so that there's true records of when amendments are made, what the revision dates of those amendments are, which was, here, you guys have every revision date in your regs from when paper was invented. So their work will be cut out for them. But it creates a situation where there's a very methodical approach to how regulations are treated, just like we would with ordinances. So we looked at your current regulations and their content, and we put together a proposed table of contents, which you saw previously, which was again that reorganization. And then we've gone through, and the PDF that you all have is the current regulations placed in that format. There have been some changes to the proposed table of contents, predominantly because of guidance from general code to make sure that when we cite things, their recommended format is followed across the board. One of the things that we found here is that you had a lot of notes and sort of sentences that were sort of blowing in the breeze. They're just maybe underneath a table or they're on another page, but they're not. There's no letter or number or Roman numeral assigned to them, which then makes it hard to cite. And so we had to make sure, for better or for worse, with the existing content that you have, that every piece of criteria in your regs has something that we could cite to. Some section 6.4C or Roman numeral I within Article 2, subsection whatever.
So everything has a home.
Everything has a home. Yes.
Unique identifier.
Correct. So the document, once you get it online, will everything is hyperlinked. So if you're looking at a specific line in the regulations or someone has a question, you can click on it, it'll generate a hyperlink, can download that section. Aaron can email the hyperlink to an applicant, and when they click on it, it'll take them right to that page. It's all indexed and searched. So we need to make sure everything was captured so that when they go through the process, it's formatted correctly. So the purpose of tonight from an action standpoint is to, get high-level feedback from you folks on your thoughts about the document. There shouldn't hopefully be too much because it's your current regulations with no changes. But in order for the reorg to start, we need to get it to general code. So we want to run this as a text amendment because we are changing the sections. And then once that process gets handed off and they've done that codification, we will then use the document online as the basis for all of the revisions going forward. So that, as you'll see, and Aaron has up, you can see in the sections, one of the things that we've tried to track, and I had to, this is the first Word or code document that I've dealt with that was a macro-enabled Word document, which created a lot of fun gymnastics that we had to do to make this work. So I created this manually, so it didn't pull all of it, but you'll see in some of them, like under 4, Article D4, it says residence districts, and then it says formerly Section 3. So in the titles, we have included the former section number. And so the reason we've done that is because when this goes online, as every time you update your regs, they will archive the old code and it will be accessible online, general code. So by creating this snapshot with the new and the old and the titles, we're sort of creating that breadcrumb trail. So going back, if you have to look at the regulations 10 years from now, when you're all still here, I'm sure, working on zoning regs, you'll be able to say, okay, this was section 6, which is why the reference in those minutes is to section 6.8. So we're trying to make sure that we're not scratching our heads down the road wondering what was what.
Right.
So as you go through the document, you see in those headings, if there was a section number that existed for that content, we've moved it over so we can kind of look for both. The titles have largely remained the same unless there was, again, content that had no title. And then we've used the content to just create something. But there are no substantive changes, no deletions. We have not changed any regulatory language or requirements or eliminated anything. So this is really just an organizational amendment at this point.
And at this point, we don't worry about formatting and.
No, so we will go through and we will take care of all of that. We didn't want to change the document too much, so we had to kind of work with what was there. So A, B, and C might now be 1, 2, 3, but if there were 4 subsections, we didn't say, oh, well, we think it should be 1 and combine. So
editorial license was one.
yeah, we will do that when we go section by section, because there's a lot of stuff in here that we want to address and move and that we don't feel makes sense in the way it is, but we gotta kind of work with what we have.
So this will get revised then.
Yes.
As we work on the sections.
Yes, exactly. So once we create this snapshot and the code goes online, we will then start running through it. And if we get to a place where we want to move this down or we want to combine or eliminate, at that point, we will do that. And then we will hand those red lines to general code and they will codify the amendments. But because this is archived, your original document will always be there. And, you and staff can just go right back in and say, I want to see what that code said. And you flip right back to it. So the comparison will be online. And I think that's really important when we're doing substantial revisions to be able to see what this section said at this time, particularly with nonconformities and all that stuff. So that's the nuts and bolts of what this is. The only other thing that I'll mention while I'm still rambling is that, we have the appendices, we have all the books, and I don't remember what they're all called, but as you'll see here, they are all now in one single PDF. They're referenced as the zoning regulations. So we don't have books, we don't have any of these other categories. Yeah, so you'll see that we pulled it in. Appendix A, which was design guidelines,
Downtown
is now included in that
Village
zone,
District.
is not a separate document.
And the rural shopping district was Appendix B in
yes.
the regulations, and those were always shown in the document as insert here.
Yeah, it's.
But they were never there.
There's nothing.
Ironically, some aren't even, the rural isn't even online at
Yeah.
this point with them.
Right.
So those, the text of those are now currently inserted in here. If there are changes that need to be made to those in the future, those can be, but they all have a home. The only thing we pulled out from the physical text was our former section 4B, which
All the special exceptions.
is
The scary
8.7. That's all of the spot zoning, special exception zones that are meets and bounds described. So you'll note that that is shown as an appendix here.
But yeah,
Alright.
there's really no,
As the last page, yeah.
we agonized over that and there is no good way to deal with that section.
I know it's a nightmare.
It is going to require a lot of sort of mental gymnastics to figure out how to deal with that so that, you know, you're not left with regs that are really bad and sort of you guys get the short end of the stick, or something that is really easy to put into the regs, but creates a lot of problems for the people that are the recipients of those current zones. So we're gonna have to figure something out with that, and it did not make sense to capture them in some different way and try to reorganize. It's like there's 35 of them or something.
Yes.
So it's dozens and dozens of pages. So we decided, because we knew we were gonna have to really rethink that whole thing, to just stick that in there as is, to not create more confusion. That is,
Yeah,
that
and
was a challenge.
not to confuse with section 4, which is the special, well,
Which we
was
need.
formerly the special exception section on procedures and, application to make special exception. So
I think Attorney Shansky once referred to all those other special exceptions as vestigial.
that wouldn't surprise me. But it's a problem. It's not consistent with statutes to have spot zoning in that manner. It's something that, has occurred in the town, and like Mike said, we're gonna have to deal with, but it was better. So those you'll see in the appendix will refer to their existing section numbers. We did not go through and renumber those. It just seemed it wasn't not worth the effort to do so.
We would have to, that would be like, not a renumbering, it would be a policy change. We would have to sit here and figure out how we're gonna tackle this and what makes the most sense, and be very cautious that we're not creating unintended consequences for the property owners. And so we can't do that and still build this as a reorganization with the same content. So we left it as is. The other thing that is very prevalent in your current document is it references other sections, right? So you're reading this sentence and it references two other sections in this, in this chapter or whatever. So when the code goes online, those will be hyperlinked directly and you'll be able to hover over that, click on it, it'll take you to that section. So those references have also been updated so that when they go through and capture it, they will reference the correct section, and all that stuff will work together and then be updated as we go. So it should make the code a little bit easier to use, because again, people won't have to be kind of going through and figuring out where things are.
And Mike, just to speak to the 3 books that we had, the zoning regulations being the first, the second, the subdivision code, and the third were the stormwater and sedimentation and erosion control regulations. So book 3, the stormwater and sedimentation erosion control measures have been incorporated into the zoning regulations. The subdivision code does not get incorporated into, because even though you're a combined commission, you work under 2 separate statutes. So as planning commissioners, you will always have a separate subdivision regulation. And we have not brought that before you. We did not do any reorganization. It's a small document and actually lined up that can be merged into the system. And you are including the subdivision regulations in your update as necessary if there are changes, but we did not need to organize that to get started.
I don't want to overpromise, but it's on general code, so I feel less bad about it. I do think that if you reference a subdivision section in the zoning code, say blah, blah, blah shall be in accordance with this. I do think that because they're codifying the subdivision regs, linking will still happen.
Yes.
But, the ability to undo or modify a subdivision reg is not handled by the CPA. And so it gets very complicated to have different documents with different authorities and different regulatory, requirements on the front end and the back end in the same code, particularly when you have overlap on some content, et cetera. So it's something that comes up often. Is there a way to integrate? And it makes it a little bit challenging. But with the linking, it'll still create that same level of usefulness when you're interacting.
I had the urge to stick subdivisions in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's all the same stuff,
I can't put it in there.
Yeah,
I also want to say, my blink reaction to this too is if we could, I don't know if it's gonna be possible as we start organizing and doing revisions further. But instead of having the articles be letters, have them be numbers and then have everything within that article start with that number.
so,
If that's gonna be possible, just to help our brains.
Yeah.
and Stuff.
that is how we started. That is the original document that we gave to you, and the way that we originally envisioned this was that the articles would have Roman numerals.
Yeah.
And, because, I think that's how we kind of tend to think about things and articles and chapters, et cetera. Chapter 1, section 3, whatever. The problem is the way that your current content is structured, unless we really rethink the whole organization, you wind up with several articles that have the same number as the section. So you end up with Article 4, Section 4. And so when you go to cite the section, you create a lot of repetitive numbers. So if you had, Article 4, Section 4, subsection B4, it just gets a little bit harder to keep that separation. So by going letter, number, it makes it easier to distinguish. So some of them
I'm not
work.
convinced.
I'm not
Huh?
convinced either.
You're not convinced?
I think.
I also,
Well, look, you can pull up the table of contents. Well, we can look at it here.
I have looked at it here.
Yeah, so
Well, one of
so
these-
Article 1 starts with section 1, right, and then 2. Then you get 4 is a little bit better because you have multiple numbers in it. So after 4, Article 5 starts with section 6, so then it shifts. And then I think it then comes back
That's
around.
weird.
Because it's just the way that the document content, I guess, is organized, right? So
That's.
I just wonder as we move forward if can.
I think the other thing that you're gonna look at is when this is online and is codified with the other codes that the town has, this will be assigned, the zoning regulations will be assigned a chapter essentially.
Yes.
And I can show you kind of an example of that. I did
yeah,
pull up
do
Vernon. Vernon's fine, right? As an example of that. Let's see here. So this is what an online codification would look like, where likely in, so this is the company, this is, we would expect to see ordinance, town charter, ordinances, and then and they have them broken out as part 1. Part 2 are where all of the regulations. And so this is very similar. We're townwide, we're codifying the zoning regulations, the subdivision regs, inland wetlands are moving over, historic district and our aquifer protection regs. So it would be similar to this where the regulations themselves would be assigned a chapter within the code. And then when you click on them, you'll see an article, but really only here. When you're referencing a section in the regulations, you're going to reference section numbers, not necessarily the article. So the article is like the overarching chapter, I guess. But when someone is seeking a special exception pursuant to section blah, 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 it would be pursuant to these section numbers or seeking a variance pursuant to it. So you wouldn't, we're not using the articles all that
No.
Right,
much.
in this example, which we looked at also.
Right.
You know, it's Article 1, and then under that, just ignore the chapter 30. But it's 1 point this, 1 point, all the
Yep.
way down to 1.11.
Mhm.
Yeah. 'cause
And then
they use
those
the
would be
decimals. So
for-
theirs are all 1 point, because we just did this with them. And their regs are a little bit better organized, but the content is probably scarier. And they do it with the decimal, so everything kind of just goes sort of down all the way through, but they don't have, the overall organization didn't lend itself to creating any of that overlap. Because, like I said, I can pull up the original. The original.
But I see also Vernon had subdivision regulations as another chapter.
Yeah. And so this 30, you will get a chapter number
Yes.
here, and, you can essentially choose what you want that to be. But like, can you just scroll through some of the actual page? Like, can you scroll down, Erin?
Yeah.
To just into the section that, okay. Pick enforcement, click on enforcement. Okay, so, let me see. Oh, these aren't gonna, trying to think about, get a way for it to pull the actual number. Close this one out. I struck out.
So you want to do a different,
Pick like A or B, pick like a subsection. It should be there unless this is, yeah. So see, you are sharing 30-1.1A. That's the section. So it will never reference, you will never say or see article again. Because really that's just a way to sort of organize things thematically. We could eliminate the articles altogether if we want. But the idea would be, what we've done in a lot of places is, oh, you're interested in residential district requirements, you need Article 3.
Right.
You need whatever. Article 6 is
I
this.
guess I'd rather have it be a number than a letter though.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, the challenge becomes Article 6, Section 6. That
That's not a problem for me.
Why is
General-
that challenge to move?
that creates, it creates confusion, because at some points, the articles and the chapters all align, and at other points they don't. And so you're asking a layperson to understand the term article means something different than the term section. And there's a very simple solution, which is to just replace it with something else, right? So general code's guidance was, should have everything be different. It should be letter, it should be number, Roman numeral, whatever, so that every time you drop down a level, it switches to what it is.
I get that from old outlining classes.
Yeah.
Still.
The Constitution would have been clearer if they didn't give numbers
Exactly.
for the articles.
That's exactly right.
That's ridiculous, to be honest. But,
Yeah.
Okay.
Put it this way,
Hey, can you show me some
We
data
also
on
might
that?
go
I'd love
beyond-
to see that. Thank
You go
you.
beyond 26.
well,
Yeah, that's,
if you go beyond 26.
So you run out of letters.
yeah.
we
Oh,
have
well,
no
we-
intentions of doing
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Weren't
yeah.
you looking to go backwards towards the 1950s size
Yeah.
regulations?
well,
You're going the wrong direction.
we,
What about Z?
yeah, Lord help us. There are a lot of towns that have double, AA, BB, they just go to that. So the good news is, we're doing the reorg with the existing content. If after that goes live and we start working through the document, you are still in a place where you're like, I cannot stand these articles. We have the ability to change it.
Fight for this.
I'm fairly certain you're gonna forget about it because nobody sees the articles,
Yeah.
but we can change it. You're not having to make that decision right
Well,
now.
for those of us who like to download them as PDFs and then we can search the
Yeah.
PDF, we're gonna see some of that.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean,
How am I gonna navigate all
You can
these different?
do all that online as well, and it'll turn all your results. Yes, you can download all the PDFs. It's gonna give you the chapter and the section. It's gonna give it to you in a Word document. I don't know if you've shown them that, but how that works, if you still have that, but
Sure.
yeah, the article, we do ultimately have the ability to make those changes if you still feel like it's creating sort of a,
Well, it'll be great to see it as we
Yeah.
progress, what,
yeah,
Yeah, and see, where is it?
what works and what
Yeah.
still doesn't
Okay.
work.
yeah, and we are very flexible, but if you,
Where's
You-
the
It's usually over off to the right.
So like scroll up to the top here with all those sections referenced and click on a couple of them, check the boxes. You know, say, oh, I want these two, boom. So now you have the options at the top to print, email, download, so you can download all of that. And
Just a section, and you
Yep,
can
not
either
the
do it
PDF.
as a Word or.
yeah, you can enable that. And so the nice part about this is that it will format correctly into Word.
In a PDF.
So you're not just downloading, it's not like you're printing from your computer, and I guess it went to your download.
We won't be able to.
Oh, you can't see it. so it's not-
Yeah, so they don't allow members of the public to download Word unless you want that to be an option, but they can create accounts for all of you, and you can go in and do any of those things.
But we shouldn't be allowed to change anything.
Well, you'd be downloading your own version. You can't do anything with this one.
Good.
You can make notes on documents, you can do all kinds of things for yourself. You can subscribe to changes.
You can also search for particular words within the entire
Oh,
code.
That's
Really?
cool.
And it will highlight throughout the online document, which is,
That's what I.
it's
Yeah.
more friendly to use
Then a PDF.
online than a PDF because
Oh,
you
yeah.
pull up.
It'll tell you every section that the word is used and where. It has an index, so you can say, I want to see where the term family is used. And it will tell you all the pages of the document where that word is used. So they index all the terminology. You'll also have access to multi-code. So they will give you access to search all of their codes in the country. So you can go in and say, I want to see definitions for the term family on every code that they have in the country on communities of under 100,000 people. Or I want to see whatever. You can search all of their entire body of code, definitions,
Is it gonna make
language.
Scrog obsolete?
The zoning code
Their
library.
library.
It also, well, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily Connecticut or,
Yeah.
because not every
You can search
municipality
yeah.
uses.
You can
this.
filter by population, by state, by all kinds of things. And they have 60 towns in Connecticut maybe, so you can search all of those things.
Nice.
And with a click of a button, you could say, oh, okay, here's 10 towns in Connecticut that already have definitions for regulations pertaining to chickens. We don't have to, research in Google. So there's a lot of functionality there.
And Mike, we also have the opportunity to scan, so we have decades of paper copies of zoning codes and we can scan those and upload our own documents so that
That'd be great.
within this
Mhm.
code, there will be a folder where
Sort of
folks can
archives.
go through and look at all of your historic regulations. So they'll literally be in one place since adoption.
Yeah.
So it's a
I like it.
nice place to have everything,
It
stay
really
organized.
sort of professionalizes the whole amendment process and makes sure that you have things filed with the clerk and that you have an official copy and that the right sections get inserted where they belong. And that everybody has the same code and they will track all the effective dates, as I mentioned. So it really is useful and creates a sense of consistency. And for example, a couple of towns that we've done recently, they'll say, shall be in accordance with this or town ordinance, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or was amended. And so general code will flag that and say, hey, your regs are referencing an ordinance which your town repealed in 1978. And so all that potential conflict in that, in this will get.
Yeah, it's gonna be really nice.
That's
And
terrific.
I mean, even our ordinances and things, they have not been recodified for at least
No, they're
20
just like old
years.
typed copies.
So, and that's very common though, it
Yeah.
happens. And so taking this opportunity to be able to enter into this kind of system moving
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
forward would be great for our record keeping.
Like what happens when general code becomes obsolete?
So you're still the owner of all the documents. They give you, electronic and hard copy authoritative files of everything that you ultimately codify. And they only do what you send to them. So if they were to become obsolete, then I guess you would no longer have the access to their website, but you still have all the original documents because every time you send them something, they're going to say, okay, they're going to send you a shrink wrapped printout and it's going to have instructions on, okay, you have 5 official books, take out pages 18 through 25 and shred them and insert these here. So you will get a mailer from them that she will get, the town clerk will get, and they will direct you how to outfit that code. So you will have like a bound official binder of documents that'll be in the town clerk's office. So you'll never lose it. It's not like,
But you'll always have the source master.
Or on archival paper, so.
yeah, I mean, everything.
The clerk's office keeps the archival paper for everything.
Yes.
Just like minutes, we have to order
Yeah.
the specific paper and they
Yeah.
keep them in the books.
They literally write and put together the national building codes, national fire codes. They're now affiliated with what used to be referred to as Municity, which was an old permitting program. So they are, this is currently their business. They're located or headquartered or whatever. Their office is in New York. They're not far. So I would think they're gonna go anywhere, but if they do, you still have all the paperwork and so yeah, I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people. So if anybody has any other like questions or big concerns about kind of what we've done so far, we can certainly talk about it. If you have questions or comments after that, get them to Aaron, we can respond or talk about it further. But really at this point, we just need to schedule.
Have you thought at all about this, something called the Plan of Conservation and Development?
Yep.
Passed a year or so ago. Given plans about how you connect this with that?
Yeah, so while it wasn't me, my firm wrote it, but it was my partner, John, who isn't here tonight because he's working in another town on a POCD. But yes, those recommendations will inform how we think about what amendments need to be made and what to do or how to make them. So we will use those recommendations and the tone of that document to inform how we need, what we need to focus on or certain things that we need to make sure we don't sort of lose sight of. Which is why I assume you all structured it so that this is the second step. Because it would be silly to decide what you want to be after you just written ribbons.
Right, but
Other towns do their regulations first and
don't
then
we have statutory changes, that could also.
Right,
Yeah.
it's also need to be.
That's part B of our,
Part B.
of our conversation, just as we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're good with part A, we can go to part B.
I just, before we jump, I did just want to say, so this is, because it's a text amendment initiated by the commission, it's a formal application. It does require referrals and scheduling. We did put it into our permit software as application number PZC 26-9. And that's what would need to, we have to refer the document with neighboring municipalities, our regional planning commission, who has already indicated that they, would prefer to hold off on making comments till we make substantive changes instead of just reorganizing. And so tonight you would have to schedule a public hearing if you're comfortable, at least at this point, with the reorganization. The earliest we could do that is the May 7th meeting. And, allow for public comment and any other questions that could be raised. And then the commission could look to adopt that so that the document can be sent to the company, start codifying, and then we can now move forward on our updates. And then that would be where our first step to begin are some of the statutory changes that need to really be addressed prior to July 1st. So we can, if the commission is comfortable moving this to a public hearing, Mike can give a little introduction as to how we're going to approach the next steps.
do we need a motion to have it on the,
To schedule a public hearing? Yes.
should we do that first then? Could I have a motion to put this on public hearing as a public hearing, May 7th, 2026? Second. Any further discussion? In favor?
Here we go.
Okay, so May 7th, do a public hearing for this. Will you be there, Mike?
I will put it on my calendar and as long as I don't have something else. I should be able to.
I just wanted to circle back for a sec to the plan of conservation and development. Does it get put onto the general code?
We can put it as a public document. It just won't be codified, but you will have complete control over public documents and you can create as many categories.
And just link it in there.
Yeah.
Just like any other kind of plan that we have.
Actually, I don't live.
There are many towns that use this for
Planning
minutes and agendas.
Oh, okay.
Many towns that don't have websites that do all that posting, they use the general code public docs for all of those things. So yeah, you can do all of those. Sign guidelines, any other body of code or any other, whatever, you've got
Policies.
other appendices or
Yeah.
books or put it all on there, yeah, for sure.
You know, coastal resiliency plans, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We can all add those on.
Good. Okay, so
Good
statutory
idea.
changes.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to put this on my calendar so I don't forget. So the first surprise was deciding to reorg and codify. The second surprise is, you know, the folks in Hartford deciding to enact all this really interesting legislation. And I think the asterisk above all of this is to some extent sort of that hashtag seemed like a good idea at the time. Because the further we get into this, the more it's going to hurt your head. And that's because the language is unclear, poorly written, and is not in many ways connected to fundamentally what it is that we do here. And that's just where we are right now. There's been a lot of chatter about this and some indication that it seems like there may be some tweaks or clarifications of this legislation in the current session, which runs for another month. So when I see you again, it may be possible that we've found that they've fixed it. But we also are working separately with SCROG and are an on-call for them to help municipalities in the region get the amendments that are required by the bill by July 1 taken care of in rapid fashion. So part 2 of this discussion is that. And I'm going to try to do like a really, really high level explanation of it. And for the purposes of what we need to worry about between now and July 1, what you need to sort of just keep in mind is essentially in any zone that is commercial or mixed use, essentially non-residential, as of July 1, we need to allow by what is called a summary review. So think of site plan, 2 to 9 unit residential developments across the board. You have no control over whether they are 2, 5, or 9 units. The applicant chooses that. You can't regulate densities. But you can develop requirements for the summary review, like site plan, where you have standards which are essentially non-discretionary yes/no criteria, right? Setbacks, coverage, height, number of stories, location on the lot, etc. So we know that come July 1, the statute says that this is in effect, which means on July 2nd, if you say, what if we do nothing? It means that if someone comes in, you have to essentially try to take that application and apply the standards currently in your regs based on the zone that it's in to figure out if it meets those criteria or not. And if you find that you have gaps in those regulations because you designed them for commercial zones and now you have a residential project, you're out of luck. So we are focused on making the changes. That's obviously priority number 1. Priority number 2 is making sure that we have something on the books for July 1 so that you don't get caught.
Yeah, a good part of this is TBD for now.
Yes,
And some of that, I think, Mike, is because the zoning regulations, in the zoning regulations and the statutes up until now, there is no definition of what a summary review is.
Yeah.
And that can be interpreted perhaps in various ways. Is that an administrative approval by the ZEO? Is that a commission review? So it is in our best interest to add some language into our regulations to create a mechanism
Makes sense.
of doing this.
Proactively.
It doesn't mean it can't be changed during our comprehensive update. It just means that we should take advantage of this, and the COGS and the state, you know, have recognized the importance of this and have set aside funds to assist municipalities in doing that. And that needs to happen prior to the end of this fiscal year. So that's sort of why we have kind of shifted directions to address this first.
It will work out well because if we focus, May, June on the summary review requirements and general code is going through the process of codifying your regs, we'll be in a good place where when we're done with all that and the dust is kind of settled and we respond to anything else that happens this session, there are several bills that are pending. One would apply this exact standard that we're talking about and bring in industrial zones. We have, do you guys have historic?
Yes.
So there's a bill that would make the ZBA the appeals board for historic district denials. Now, if you get denied by historic, you have to go to court. This bill, which has some broad support, would say you can now appeal that decision to the ZBA, which is potentially a scary thing or not, depending on your
I
board.
think we've ever had appeals.
And then there's some language which also undoes all of the standards related to accessory dwelling units. So towns were able to opt out and we're able to create some qualifiers, and they're basically saying, no, that's going away too. So,
all this will flush out.
right, the
Yeah.
session ends May 6th. So as of that, I don't know, when's your May meeting? What was the date?
7.
May 7th.
So we'll know.
So we'll know by May 7th what other work we have to do, but it'll work well. The general code will be doing their thing while we're figuring this out, and then we'll get the code back and we can get started.
Yeah, and some of those are less pressing. I mean,
Right.
it's similar to like our parking, when it was reduced, you could opt out of,
For ADUs or.
just, per number of bedroom spaces
Yeah.
required.
Yeah.
If the town did not opt out and you didn't change your regulations, the statute overruled that. So that would happen if the statute changes for our accessory apartment section. That's a little less concerning, I think, than the summary review process where you actually need a mechanism to be
Yeah.
and some standards to be reviewing this. So
Did make changes to parking. If it's under 16 units,
Yeah.
you can't require parking and you can't deny it if you don't think there's enough.
Yeah.
If you feel there are areas in town where you need to have some control over parking and you're dealing with something that's plus 16 units, there's a process for a parking needs or parking demand assessment to be done.
We don't have 16.
And you can create parking mitigation districts, traffic mitigation districts, which give you specific authority over those little zones for parking. But largely, the smaller stuff, you can have whatever requirements you want in the code. If you say they need 100 and they decide to do 50, if it's under the 16, you can't do anything about it. So again, I don't think that's as big of a deal because largely it becomes a marketing issue for builders. If they don't offer parking and their development requires access to a car, that's usually on them. And unless you have areas where you think people are just going to free for all on the street, which you still have control over because it's your road, it's not a big problem here. And then I guess the only other thing that probably is worth mentioning, I don't know if you have a lot of this here, but you guys do or tend to receive like protest petitions. So that is essentially out the
We don't
window.
talk about.
environmental interveners, but
So the interveners obviously is the same, but a protest petition, which would require a supermajority vote if you get a percentage of the landowners yet. So they increase the percentage of land from 20 to 50. And then said, even if you get to 50, it's just a simple majority, which is required anyways.
Woodbridge might have just changed that.
Woodbridge,
Did they just have that as an issue? I mean.
Woodbridge, yeah, so I support Woodbridge. They had 3 environmental interveners for a recent housing application. But so they were dealing with that. They didn't have a separate
a protest.
protest petition. There was no zone change at that point.
I can't recall any protest
No, I
petition in generally in this
region.
area. Yeah, shoreline.
And there may be a very nice opportunity here to do something wise.
That'd be good, but
I mean,
it's a general theme coming from State House to initiate more affordable housing. That what's behind this?
Yes.
Largely, so, I mean, there is a feeling that the state as a whole is somewhere north of 100,000 dwelling units shy of what they need.
Right.
And I mean, so Tyke, in one way or another, we have worked in between 60 and 70 towns in Connecticut. And I think have a fairly good understanding of a lot of that. We don't do a lot in Fairfield County for a number of reasons, some of which are by choice, but outside of that, no, I mean, I'm serious that I think that largely that's what's driving this, because there's a perspective amongst a lot of people that planning and zoning commissions and zoning regulations are the barrier to why everybody hasn't seen all the things that they say the state needs.
Right.
It's really not the case. It really just isn't. Many towns are in a position of, if you have reasonable development, we're willing to work with you. Our regulations, we try to be flexible with some obviously parameters, but there are, except for that corner of the state, there are very few towns that are taking that perspective of, we don't want anything, go somewhere else. Like,
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's also that the zoning
Mhm.
regulations tend to be cost drivers.
yes, I think that they can be, in that a zoning regulation will have a large impact on whether a project is feasible.
Correct.
But after that, and that gets solved through a text amendment, right, which isn't very costly, they have to sell you, but once you get past that, really then what comes into play is material costs and the building code,
Correct.
which is where everything falls apart. And so, I mean, I can think of several towns, all of which would fit on my hand, that if all the projects they'd approved in the last 5 years were built, you're probably amassing 2,000 units, but it just doesn't
But
make
part of the
sense.
initiative is also to increase the density beyond what had been previously allowed.
Well, they want to focus density, because, they want the transit that the state already has to be more productive. And that they want to make use of a lot of that stuff, which is why a lot of the things that you'll see coming out of some of these other sections of this bill, or with CMDA and all this other stuff, is got a transit focus. That's where they really
That's
want.
right, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, and transit tends to have water and sewer, so then you're not worried about density.
They're not all necessarily deed restricted affordable. It's housing.
Yeah,
And the
general.
housing.
attainability.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily all 830G.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's the theme, of what's behind this.
Yeah, it's,
The
It's a lot.
affordable, well, yeah, you bring up your inventory, you lower your.
I think there's just a big disconnect, and they still think that housing isn't being built because towns are just too hard to work with. And I think there's a handful of towns that are that way, but the vast majority are not. And they just haven't, I think, caught up.
I think we just crossed the 2% mark of affordable housing.
We're up to 2.
I think we're over 2.
I reported a lot more units.
It's ways to go.
Yeah, but there's a lot of reasons for that. And some of it may have been historic zoning practices,
Exactly.
but there's a lot of things that go into it. And so it's not just simply, if the state mandates a bunch of things as
Right.
being allowable, that they're gonna get built.
Right.
And so I think that's where the disconnect is. And so it is a challenge because, now every town in Connecticut is scrambling to figure out what this thing means. The COGs are having to figure out how to deal with this, all the housing growth plan requirements, and how to establish the developable land inventory, and then ultimately will assign you as a town the number of units you will have to focus on trying to create. And there's so much subjectivity to all of that and how that gets applied. It's a lot of money and energy, and I think if they put that money into filling the funding gaps on some of the projects that can't happen but are
Right.
close.
Right.
So, I think that zoning gets a bad rap in a lot of ways, and I just don't see that as the case, but I don't know, I haven't been around you guys enough to know if you guys are on the good side or the bad side of that, so we'll.
Why
Well.
range of opinions
There are.
Madison? There's some folks who think nothing should ever change. It's the perfect community. And some other, I think we all love living here. Frankly, we could afford to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But some folks think that, rather than have things imposed, it's good to, it's not, it need not be a problem. It may be an enhancement of the quality of life. to be able to, some folks who can't afford.
He's
to
speaking
live
for
here.
himself.
I'm speaking for
Yeah,
myself, I mean, but they are troglodytes and, but,
there's something to be said for figuring out an efficient way to move things forward, either because it's been mandated or because it's sort of the way that the world is going. And when you're talking about housing, a lot of times people think that housing and economic development are two separate things, and they are not.
no,
I was just in Woodbridge, and housing is a very, very, very big issue there. And I gave them an example of a project which was just approved in another town that I'm in. It is like 280 units across a couple of buildings, and there's a small mixed-use component. And the assessor's initial estimation is that it will be worth around $50 million, which is a massive jump to a suburban community from a grand list perspective. And so when you start looking at a substantial impact to the grand list for something like housing, if you're willing to sort of take the leap of faith that allowing density in the right areas makes some sense, you can achieve those things with just a handful of parcels rather than forcing sprawl, because everybody just cuts it up and says, we need 2 acres and 6,000 square feet in a
Yeah.
house. So you
Good
can,
point, sir.
you could really have a lot of impact in a lot of ways with like a handful of parcels
That we don't even see.
that you won't even see
Yeah.
or hear,
With the,
And it won't impact our police or our school.
or your schools or,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's a positive, so.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's definitely, yeah, I think there's a shift with some of the way people are thinking about that and for the better. But the good news is with all this housing stuff that's happening, there's a lot more data and things to point to.
That's a great point, Dan.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the biggest issues in Woodbridge with that project was this idea that all this, the data suggested that 96 units would generate 7 school-aged children. And the average person that was not in support of that project thought that that was insane to suggest that only 7 kids would come out of 96 units. And that, I mean, that was a fundamental breakdown,
Yeah, yeah.
polarizing point in the sand. And the data is clear, so yeah, and we'll get into all of that.
Very good.
So I think the last thing that I'll mention is one of the things that we decided to do because of the fact that we're all going forward with this summary review, with this question mark of what it is and what it will become, is we've kind of taken the position of wanting to take a more form-based approach to how we regulate and set the requirements up. So we've been working on a template because we're working on this with maybe 6 towns in the Sprague region right now. And so we are creating a template which will separate the types of buildings into different categories, 2 to 3 units, sort of 4 to 6 units, the cottage clusters, because that also has to be allowed, and then commercial building to residential use conversions. And so we're going to have the standard bulk table of all the requirements as far as setbacks and coverage and height and stories and whatever. And then we're also going to have example renderings of the style of building, the roof types, the material types, landscaping design, so that we will be able to go in and very quickly plug and play the data points in the table, but we will have graphical representations of what we expect these buildings to look like that have all of the architectural features that you might expect with regard to the types of windows. And we don't want someone to come in and build very low cost housing that's not in context of what's around it, not because of all the things like community character, because we know can't get into that anymore, but cheap, low cost, not what the word is.
It's not talking about Cabrini Green here.
I'm just saying cheap housing that's sort of poorly designed and not thoughtful is not a better place for people to actually live.
No.
We don't want
So-
that.
Correct.
So, if people are gonna be expected to live here for more than one lease term, it ought to be a place that's enjoyable to live, just like a 2-acre plot. So I think we will plan to present the initial draft of those templates in May. I think with time we'll have to.
Yeah,
Okay.
and some of that will be using, your commercial zones are the downtown, your east and west end, and we have,
North Circle. Circle.
and the rural shopping district is our other one. So we have relatively small areas.
Very few.
But we do have bulk standards for each of those.
Yeah.
So the initial look would be kind of modeling this this format to make it, if you comply with all of these options, then, you know, you're comfortable moving forward with approvals. And so Mike, we'll plug in what our existing standards are to kind of get an idea what this looks like in our particular zones.
Yep,
Um,
I agree.
it's a good approach.
Okay.
So I guess we could,
Next month,
Yeah, it's coming up.
coming up.
yeah, so at that meeting after the public hearing, hopefully it's a, you know, uneventful public hearing for just the reorg, then we can kind of jump right into that.
Yeah, I think you're.
Great piece to look at, and that'll keep us on time. And the other piece is, if we end up having, just because of the scheduling of our meetings, we may look to have, you know, 2 or 3 commissioners who may be available during the day to kind of vet out some things a little bit in preparation for the commission. If someone has some flexibility and might be interested in kind of sitting on some type of working, you know, as needed
Sure.
group to call in. I can poll you
Have me,
and,
I'd be interested and I can make the time.
that might be helpful, just
Great. Yeah.
especially for this piece.
The
Yeah.
crunch time.
First time.
Like if you know, right now, if, you know, you approve the reorg, well, you're 30 days for your next meeting and we're gonna give everybody 35 days notice. So if we do everything at the monthly meetings, we will lose 2 months every time.
Yeah.
So getting a first pass with a small group of people a week and a half ahead of this meeting means that we're hopefully closer. And so you guys are in a position of being able to make sort of maybe more progress here. And we can not lose 60 days every time we give you something. For summary review, we really don't have the time because we've got to basically get something ready for May so you can refer it out to have a hearing in June. But it doesn't leave us much of an opportunity to get that first pass. And I, you know, I know in a couple of towns, and I don't know if it exists here, if you have sort of some developers that sort of stay in a couple of these towns and are sort of known and kind of do everything here, whatever, but there have been some towns that have already been approached by real estate developers or real estate like landowners saying, oh, we heard about the summary review thing, you know, we're gonna submit an amendment, you shouldn't have to do, we'll submit an amendment, we
Yeah.
think this, we could do this together, right? Wink, wink, we're gonna do this, we'll help you out, we'll submit it and you can review it. So I do think, and actually the event that happened with CCAPA in Cromwell, I saw 3 or 4 housing developers there. So I do think there are some people paying attention to that. Maybe, you know, trying to scoop up commercial properties that haven't worked for commercial purposes that now suddenly can be 9
Like
units.
balls, yeah.
Any of those. So I don't think you're gonna have a line out the door in Aaron's office on July 2nd, but there's certainly an opportunity that someone could come in and say, oh, you don't have regs yet?
So be advised.
So we just want to get something that is as good as we can in the time that we have so that we can close that door as much as possible. And then we can continue to refine from there.
Bigger.
Do some towns have kayak-free zones because
Kayakers are crazy.
Just pissed you off.
Kayak-free zones.
But I love fish, so.
Yeah.
You
get ready for it.
Kayak-free zones for Madison.
They just pissed you off.
Where we should go.
I don't, the
I
only,
just thinking.
the only anecdote I can give you with that is somebody who wanted to start a kayak business, but claimed that the town told him he could not because of something related to the requirements for him to run it out of his home. And he claimed it was because the town wanted to rent the kayaks themselves and didn't want competition. I don't know if that correlates.
It'd be hard to do
It's
it.
best I can-
That's the best.
Down with that.
They told me not to put it at 6 a.m. on Sunday, that was super awesome.
Kayak free, you can't say I've heard that one before.
Well, thanks.
No
Thank you
worries.
very much.
Thank you for
I
having
would
me.
like to say how impressed I am just as a software engineer and someone who lives and breathes by order. I very much appreciate the effort that it took to organize all of that.
Thank you.
And I'm super curious who's gonna do your testing, because I haven't done like the link testing, on web pages and such.
Yeah, I guess they convert it all to, is it an XML? Or I don't know, something that they run it through on their end that captures all the links.
Automated
And-
testing.
whatever they have.
Magic.
And there's, yeah, they're sort of back end. And I've not seen anything incorrect yet. And so they will do an organizational analysis on their end and make sure that the structure of the code meets their standards and doesn't have any gaps or failures before they start it. And they will send a review to you all and say, here's what's going on, here's the chapters, here's the problems. And they'll flag all that right up front.
Good.
And so, yeah, it does bring a sense of order. And it is nice to be able to have all that. Dealing with the document was a challenge.
It's, it's in bad shape.
I don't know how anybody knows if they've met the regs, because I don't know how the entirety of the regs, I don't think exists in one place.
That's true.
In people's heads maybe, but like, it's not on the web. I don't know.
No, not on the web.
2 appendix A's, an appendix B, a book 2.
Formerly that, and an empty page.
Yes.
I know I just had a couple questions. You were asking about the general code, the company, the general code. Did we do like a vendor risk assessment on this company to see how stable they are?
So there are, I won't speak for Aaron, but
Cause I
There are-
do think about like, they're not a fly by night company. You said they're this large company, they're nationally
Yeah.
known, so they've got like a good, are they public or are they privately held firm?
The town clerk has gone
That-
through and been part of as
That
our
just gives-
official record
I can't remember
keeper.
who was asking the questions, like some semblance of security, they're just not gonna up and disappear in our stuff.
Yeah,
So
so, yeah,
and if they did, we would have, the country would have no building code, no
That.
fire code.
That's where I was going, is they're probably very well vetted at this point if national interests are being. put-
Yeah, they are, I mean, I can't imagine that they would go anywhere given that they're, they codify all types of legislation across local, county, all across the country. There are only two vendors that do this in the state. The other is Unicode. I don't know much about types of companies that they are, but I know that having worked with.
Unicode is Civic Plus.
Yeah, Unicode is much more challenging to work with and not nearly as detail oriented in how responsive they are with updating things and their tracking of what happens and the timeliness and cost and functionality. So several towns have gone from the Unicode system to general code because it aligns much more with how things happen here. But I assume that you guys went through all that to tell her she was pretty on top of it.
Yes, and the town clerk ultimately, is had conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been well vetted, they're not going anywhere.
Thanks so much, Mike, for that presentation.
Thank you.
for
Great
being here
presentation.
first.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will see you in a month.
It's the sun in Casablanca at the last scene, but this is the start of a long relationship.
And
That's case.
hopefully not too long. And I
The French captain.
will try to, one of the things that I try to be really cognizant of, and I think we do a good job of, is not creating sort of commission fatigue where we drop 30 pages of amendments at 9:30 at night after you've had 4 public hearings and you're sort of uninterested. We'll move this along at a speed that makes sense, and we'll take our foot off the gas when needed to make sure that it's, we don't want you to be saying, that reg is terrible a year after we're done.
Thanks.
You don't have to do it, so we'll get there.
Okay, great. Again, and next on our agenda, we have approval of minutes. Secretary John Morgan.
Okay, we're going to talk about the minutes from the March 19th, 2026 meeting. Commissioners present were Carol Snow, John Doucette, John Morgan, Mike Bugda, Michelle Clark, who was seated, Max Caroon, who needs to be added to the minutes, Bob O'Connor, and Jeffrey Downs via Zoom. Commissioners absent were Janet and Andy, and Aaron was also present as a staff member. A motion to review and approve the minutes? John? Second? Mike? Second. So I just had a couple of minor adding Max as an in attendance. In the first page, there's a paragraph that begins on present on behalf of the applicant. We noted that one The attorney attended by Zoom, but we didn't note that Mike Ott attended by Zoom, so I guess just for consistency, we probably should say Mike Ott
Sure.
also attended by Zoom. And then there was a couple of minor spelling things that I've already given to Aaron. Anybody else? have anything?
Nope.
Great. Motion to, or vote to approve?
Oh, well, I understand that my name is the S early on, but it included it later on. Other than that,
Oh, is it spelled?
This
Oh,
one.
yeah, is it, yes, is missing.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
but it's included later on, so. That's all.
What was the first name?
Gotcha.
Dylan or something?
Dylan. That's cool. Listen,
Dylan Duce.
I don't know why it does that. It's, yeah,
Spell check.
Okay, vote to
Vote to
approve.
approve?
that was.
sorry, Joe.
Thank you.
Jenny, you're abstaining because you were there.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no remarks or comments. Aaron, anything else?
No, as of now, we don't have any applications for your next meeting. So I'll give it 24 hours and then cancel.
Good to know.
So yeah, if we don't have anything,
Great. All right.
we may have spring break.
Spring break. April vacation.
So I have a,
Let's go.
Carol,
Somebody's
one
warm.
quick
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
When we put out the notice for this public hearing about, is there a way to word it so it's kind of making sure people understand it is basically just
Just a reorg and not a.
of the numbers?
Yeah,
And that's basically,
Nothing new.
Changing.
Yeah.
that is how I drafted this in the and I can just kind of read it real quick to you so that you we worked on that today. Computer slow. So it's a Madison Planning and Zoning Commission application for text amendment to reorganize existing zoning regulations for migration into online codification system. So I can add another line that says there are no substantive.
I would say that.
Leave that.
Yeah.
Language.
Yeah.
That's really unfair, but. no.
And then the
Maybe
legal
Not the meeting that's
notice
gonna
will
change
say that.
anything.
Use regular people language. Yeah. Even substantive.
Less than the substantive, and, right, no, there would be no,
Nothing has
it's
changed.
not the meeting to
Stay tuned.
talk about.
We're just getting our ducks in a row. We're not changing the ducks.
Yeah.
Good way of putting it.
Better than.
Yeah, and that's the goal. And the legal notice will reflect that as well.
Ducks in a row.
Yeah.
All right, good idea. Anything else?
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
We are adjourned at 8:27.